We're going to speak this morning on grace, and I'm going to draw a map for you. That be all right? Only this time I'm going to use people in the audience to draw the map. So I'm going to come out to the audience in a few minutes, and I'm going to predestine or unconditional election probably 4 people. If I come close to you and you're so shy that this would intimidate you, then you just gotta shake your head no. Or you can slip me $20 and if you're really shy, it's 100. I'm gonna draw a map because grace means different things to different people, and what grace means to you depends on where you are on the map. But let me start at the end, which ought to make some of you very happy. There are 2 ways of missing grace, and the other way is to expect it, to earn it, or to take it for granted. Here's a story of a sinful woman, and the word hamartolos means, quote, preeminently, notoriously sinful. One who is defined by certain characteristics or vices. So this is not just a person committing misdemeanors. This is a person committing one or more of the 7 deadly sins. A sinful woman sneaking into a Pharisee's house, in a room full of Pharisees. These people are conservative, they are intelligent, they are pious, and they are serious. They are college church. Here is a notoriously sinful person sneaking into a Pharisee's house, interrupting the meal and touching him 4 times. 4 times. In verse 38, she weeps and her tears bathe his feet. She lets down her hair, which you never did as a woman in public, and then she wipes his feet. Then, using her mouth, she kisses his feet. Then she pulls an alabaster jar of perfume out from her breast and pours it onto his feet. This is so remarkable that Simon the Pharisee draws attention to it. He says, if this man were a prophet, he would know the kind of woman who is touching him. Simon sees it. She's touching him 4 times in the middle of church. Jesus, at the end of the story, in verse 44 and 45, retells the story using all 4 of these touches. Simon, when I came into your house, you never gave me water, but she has bathed my feet with her tears. That's 1. Then she has wiped them with her hair. That's 2. Then you never gave me a holy kiss like you were supposed to. And she has not stopped kissing my feet since the moment I arrived. That's 3. And you never gave me perfume or oil for my head. And she has oiled or perfumed my feet. That's 4. So significant is it that the woman has broken virtually every social and religious custom. She just barged into our worship service and started kissing the feet of the Messiah. Simon is not offended at the woman. He's shocked, but he's offended at Jesus. He says, if this were a prophet, he would know the kind of person who's touched. He would know that this woman has no business touching him. He'd tell her to stop. Jesus then goes into a parable in, is it verse 41 and 42? A parable about two debtors. One owes 100,000, the other one owes 10,000. And Simon, which one, when both were forgiven, which one would love him more? That's what you read. Which one would love him more? In the words of Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? I mean, for Simon, the Pharisee, the whole thing is about obedience. The woman has found another way. Love. Jesus picks up on this and says, she is forgiven because she has loved me. That's it? That's all you got to do? I mean, what about the 4 spiritual laws, man? What about baptism? What about catechism? What about all of these rituals of entry? She just, what? Loves you? Man, I don't even know what that means. Well, Simon, you wouldn't. The woman breaks every rule and is forgiven on the basis of love alone. Simon is strong in obedience, but the woman is strong in love. How we doing, church? Are you good? We're almost done. Well, no, we're not. Now to the map. Now to the map. About 6 years ago, 2019, I drew on a whiteboard, decided to just map it out on the floor. I drew for you the difference between a bounded and a centered community. I don't think you can understand what's happening in this story unless we understand the rules and the rituals for purity. Let me just stop for a second and say all holiness churches, and we are one, all holiness churches define holiness in terms of purity. And so it is necessary for us to identify what are the behaviors and practices of purity. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. The Word of God says, come out from among them and be separate. And so we talk about separating ourselves through rituals of purity. In a bounded community, and I'm just going to let this stage here represent the inner circle. Are you tracking so far? Yes? So if you're drawing pictures, you'll just draw a big circle on your page and you'll tell yourself that anything inside of that circle belongs to the community. Anything that is outside the circle or on the floor does not belong to the community. Tracking so far? Now, the two distinguishing marks of bounded communities, those inside the circle, is two things. One of those is uniformity or similarity. We belong because we have certain things in common with one another. We all practice the same things. We all have pretty much the same beliefs. We all follow membership commitments there. Membership is a form of bounded communities. Are you with me so far? The other thing is, we're not only like each other, we are different from people who are not in the community. Those are the two things. One, we are similar to each other, same beliefs, same convictions. And 2, we are different from people that are not in the community. With me so far? Now, let's have 4 guests. Ephraim, you're an extrovert. Come on, man. Come on, stand right here. Now, I'm going to ask 2 of them to go onto the platform and 2 of them to stay on the floor. So, Ephraim, take your pick. I knew it. I knew it. Somebody said, pick me or I'm going to get left. Who else? John. You're an introvert. You'll kill me later. You get to pick either on the floor or on the platform. I need 2 more. Who's going to? Aaron, come on, man. Come up here. You're an extrovert and you're like 6'14" or something, so I know you'll see them. So you can either pick it or you're going to stay on the floor. I know who you are, man. Just by just one more. Alex, you want to come up here? You're like, well, no, I don't, but it's either this or drum, baby. All right, now, what we got is 2 people that belong to the community and 2 people who do not. Are you tracking? Now, what the community is built around are 2 things. 1 is purity, and 2 is solidarity. Purity is simply rules that we all keep that try to create order and structure and decency in a world that is coming apart, is uncivil, and more profane. And so whenever religious communities create community, they try to create a behavioral difference from the world that they are called away from. Tracking? So purity is the first way we do that. And then solidarity is the other way. Solidarity just speaks of the way that we belong to each other, the way that we both participate in the bounded communities. So we know who we are and we know what we belong to by purity. We have laws and rituals that keep us from being contaminated by the world, and solidarity. We are one. We will defend ourselves from any outsiders trying to get in. Still tracking, or am I losing you? Uh-oh. Am I losing you? All right. There are 3 laws that govern laws of purity in the Old Testament, at least 3. Here they are. The first one is the law of contact, which says, walk with me for a second. You're going to hate this, aren't you?
No, it's fine. Where are we going?
We're going to go right down here, and we're going to stop right here. The law of contact simply says, whenever what is holy comes into contact with what is not holy, you guys touch each other. What is holy? You guys are bonding, man, right here. What is holy becomes contaminated. Because law number 2 is the law of transmission that says whenever what is holy comes into contact with what is unholy, the transmission only works one way. What is unholy always transmits its unholiness to what is holy. What is holy never transmits holiness to the unholy. Are you tracking? You already know this. If you step into a room with 4 people who have COVID, you're more worried about getting sick than you're thinking you're going to make them healthy. Or why do you wear a mask? If you're healthy and you believe transmission works both ways, you should come to church on Sunday and cough on everybody. You don't do this because you know how transmission works. Things always in a fallen world through entropy move from what is whole to what is unwhole. That's the law of transmission. The third law is the law of permanence that says when the unholy transmits its unholiness, then what is holy must leave the community. Now, in Jesus' day, you could do this by eating the wrong foods, by touching corpses, by immoral acts, by consulting a medium. Any of these things were breaking the code, and you had to leave. In today's church, those are no longer the rules, because every generation creates its own deadly sins. So today, for instance, sexual immorality is nowhere near as egregious as prejudice. And saying that you were drunk or that you're addicted or even an atheist, I can't believe in God, is less egregious than, say, spousal abuse or owning the wrong stocks or having the wrong convictions. Are you with me? Now, my suggestion, I'm not trying to suggest some sins are worse than others. I'm simply trying to suggest that every generation creates their own sins. And on the basis of violating those sins, you are asked, formally or informally, to leave the community. You don't belong here. Still with me? Now you can begin to see how powerful it is that a woman who is out here, in fact, John, we should stand back here because we are long ways from him. You can see how it is that she would risk shame and humiliation, and she would push through a densely crowded room and make her way to the feet of Jesus and just weep because so far no one has done anything to show him hospitality. Simon, you were supposed to give me water, and she has given me tears. You would have wiped my feet, and she has used her hair. You should have met me at the door with a holy kiss, and she's been kissing my feet. And where is the oil? She's poured it on my head. And in a strange way, Jesus has redefined community. Community for Jesus is not about moral boundaries. It's not about keeping laws of church membership. Community for Jesus is about a relationship with the center, which is Christ himself. You don't look shocked at that. And some of you are upset. You're saying, so you're thinking there are no boundaries. Oh, there are boundaries. But the boundaries in a centered community run through the human heart. Some people inside the community have their backs to the center, while other people outside the community have their face to the center while their closest friend does not. And this one over here, facing the center, belongs to the community in a way that Ephraim does not. There are boundaries, but they're not where you think they are. Thank you, guys. You can all go down. Now, this raises what is the last irony for me. The irony is that the woman who was all the way outside of the community ends up being more spiritual than Simon, who grew up in the community. How is it that the unsaved and the unrepentant are more spiritual than people who grew up full members of College West? Simon, I have something to say to you. There are people in this world, lots of them, who are not formally so-called Christians, and yet they are closer to the Christ than you are. Right here, I see two different tribes that are in our church. There are some in our church who, like the sinful woman, have done things in the past where they're into things right now, and you think that those things disqualify you because you know that those sins are not welcome in a religious community. And so when you come to church, you feel like you never fit. You'd stop coming except you're too religious to quit. And you just think that you should be here. You hope it will change, but every Sunday you feel distant and you feel withdrawn because your life seems to be the opposite of everything College Church talks about. On the other hand, there are a good number of us, and I'm in this group myself, who grew up religious. And our problem is that we haven't done all of those things. But we feel this obligation to keep all of these laws and rules. And can I just speak for some of us? Man, this is heavy. Luther said, the law says do this, and it is never done. It's never enough. I pray and God feels far away. I don't hear that voice that Steve talks about. These people commit sins with their bodies, And these people over here commit them in their minds. We do with our minds what the sinful woman was doing with her body. Only because it's internal and nobody sees it, we simply annex it and we just go, this must be the way that it is. Church, can we not look across the spectrum and see the honesty and the transparency of a woman pushing her way through a religious crowd because she is more interested in Jesus than she is in protecting her own reputation? We would gladly come to the altar if we weren't worried about how it would look. I thought you were so much further than that. When this person, the sinful woman, has a false conversion, she loves Jesus, but she never changes. Her love never leads to obedience. But when Simon has a false conversion, he obeys, but it never leads to love. Salvation is so cognitive. It's all in the head. So what happens typically is when religious people like us speak of being free, we interpret that as license and we over-convert. We throw off every restraint, we go to college, and we do what we want to do because our parents and our peers are gone. I did this. That's not freedom. That's permission. And when she over-converts, she becomes legalistic. She says, when I grew up, I was trapped in alcoholism. Every form of alcohol is wrong for me and for you. She becomes overzealous. She sets a bunch of rigid rules in order to protect herself from ever going back. Are you with me so far? This woman, when she comes to Christ, her sins are absolved. There's absolution. When Simon comes to Jesus, there were no sins. But he's adopted. He's a son. He's no longer a slave. I think there's two kinds of people in the room. Some, like the sinful woman, you keep trying, you keep coming, and you're hoping that something in you will magically change. What you hate about religious communities is not Jesus, it's Simon. This is what you hate. Can I have a word with you? Please, in the name of Christ, keep coming. Keep pushing through the religious boundaries. Do not let shame, gossip, commitments, or guilt keep you from pursuing Christ. It won't be easy, but you must keep trying. And some of us in the church this morning are like Simon, who grew up in the church, baptized as an infant, then catechized, then confirmed at the age of 12, and then we took some membership courses, and then we got elected to the board, and then we studied for, you see it, don't you? Every indicator we have ticked off, and yet there is a strange absence of fire. Where is the fire? We have all been desensitized by emotional sermons calling for a response. And we say to ourselves, not again. I know exactly where this sermon is going. And religious people are already building the boundaries. Right now, inside, they're already going up. We're already stealing ourselves away from Him, because you grew up watching religion being manipulated, and you were right about that. You were right about that. But there is still Jesus. We have to deal with Him. So both of us are here. In a moment, I'm gonna go back to Him. And I'm just gonna ask people in the congregation to join me. Not at this altar, but at this one. And some of you are going to come from a position of an outsider who wants more than anything to get to Him. I'm going to ask you to risk shame, put it aside, and come to the platform and stand or kneel around the Christ, the center. Others of you that have seen every altar call in the book, used and overused, I'm going to ask you to put your experience, some cases cynicism, down. Say it's still Christ that I want. I'm going to ask you to come to the platform and stand around the altar. Isn't this what Paul meant in Ephesians chapter 2 when he says, but you were once far off, without hope and without God in this world. But in the form of Christ, God has created one new person out of the two. Some of you were far away and some of you grew up near. But He has come and declared peace to those who were far and those who were near, reconciling in Himself one new person out of the two. This must be what He meant. Are you still there? Last story. There was a man who had two sons. One came to him and said, Father, I want my inheritance. Have you heard this? He said, I want my inheritance. Now. So he took the father's inheritance and he went off to a faraway country and he started living riotously. He partied and his money ran out. He went looking for a job. He couldn't find one. And then, out of money and work, he finally settled for a job of feeding pigs. Pigs, he thought to himself. Do you know the family I have come from? Do you know what my siblings would think if they knew I was feeding pigs? But he fed them, and nobody gave him anything. And one day, he came to his senses, and he said, how many of my father's kids have more to eat than I do? This is what I'll do. I will go back to the Father, and I will say to him, I have sinned against you. Make me like one of your slaves. Make me like Simon. He didn't get all the way back, and the father, perched as he was on the porch, saw him coming, and he ran. The old man ran. It was completely inappropriate for old men to run. And he hugged him. And he shouted to those on the far right, get the sandals, get the ring, get the robe. My son who was far off has come home. The older boy, he saw this and he started thinking to himself, how is it that I spend my whole life keeping these stupid membership commitments? I did everything those religious people told me to do. And he gets all of the glory. I keep the law for the law's sake. I hate these rules, but I've kept them anyway. And he breaks every one, and he gets them. Father sees this, runs to the field, says to the boy, what are you doing? A member of our family was lost, and he has come home. You can't stand out here. But the older son held his ground. And even though he was close to the father, he turned his back. He was not a son for precisely the same reason the prodigal was a son. It all has to do with love for the Father. If you come from this side, let your love lead you to obedience. If you come from this side, let your obedience lead you to love. However you come and wherever you come from, come to the Father. Come now.